Awesome.
So are we tasting live? I got bottles too.
Yeah, I got bottles.
It's after 5, right?
Yes. I grabbed a couple off my shelf and get the day started. I get off at 3, so we're having a live Q&A. Oh, looks like we're having an issue already. Edit.
I'm gonna try some Blanco just to make sure it still tastes the same.
I think that's a spectacular idea.
But I only have these big rock. I'm at my office. I was digging around trying to find a proper tasting glass. Well, I could find one of these big rocks glasses. So I'll have to make this one work. Thought you were supposed to be the tech guy.
I am. I had this all set. I took my computer to work.
I'm just messing with you, man.
I took my computer to work. Edit. All right, let me run over. See, I bet you were on my personal profile.
What is that? Oh, it's just a ladybug. I was like, what in the world? There's a bug in my office.
There we go, maybe. All right, man, we're live on that page. We run over to All Things Tequila. Groups, where you at? I didn't like that. All right, give me 2 seconds. Remove. Save changes. Do this while I'm in here. Events.
Are we recording? Are we live?
Yeah, we're live on 2 of the pages. I'm just trying to get us on the other one right quick. And then we'll start the chat. Take me 2 more seconds to get that going. Oh, I bet you that's what I did. Save changes. All righty. Go live. Now we're live on all platforms. Well, my name is CJ, and this is a tequila guy that I've been wanting to get on here. Jaguar reached out to me just a little while ago, and man, we put a plan together, and it looks like it's finally coming together, and we're going to get everybody out here and hopefully enjoy everything. What's going on? Running late. So join me as we go over for the next probably 45 minutes to an hour, we'll say, and enjoy everything we got here. So you are an attorney that wanted to be an entrepreneur that got into bourbon first or whiskey, and then somehow landed into the tequila world.
That's right. Yeah. Thanks for having me, CJ.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. So explain how that works, and how did your parents feel?
My mom was very upset when I quit my law firm. My dad was an attorney and was pretty excited because he knew the path, but
Yes.
was excited and nervous for me. But life presents all kinds of opportunities. You know, it's you just kind of never know. It wasn't like a planned path, and sometimes you just got to take that leap of faith and go for something. So for me, it was spirits. I didn't know how I was going to end up as an entrepreneur, but I mean, I had all kinds of side businesses, from drone businesses to beer vending businesses to background check attempted business. I was always scheming, you know, of some sort of something to do, because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. You know, nothing, you know, no scams, but just trying to scheme a business idea. Like, do you think this would work? Do you think I could quit practicing law and do this? And it ended up, a friend of mine had started a vodka distillery that ended up going under, and I represented them during the liquidation of that company, and then just fell in love with craft spirits in general through that process. So I live in Tennessee, and so it seemed pretty obvious to me that Tennessee is synonymous with whiskey and bourbon, and that the biggest mistake of the vodka distillery was trying to do vodka to begin with. They should have done whiskey. And I got, you know, fully into the craft bourbon boom and movement. This was like 2016, 2017. Ended up raising money from some of my clients to buy my other client, the vodka distillery, out of liquidation, recapitalize the business, and try to make a go in the bourbon world. And I created a brand called Blue Note Bourbon, named after the Memphis Blues, which we grew successfully. I ended up, you know, selling the majority of the company to outside investors, and we ended up not necessarily having the same vision for the company and for the brand. And so 2 years ago, I left the bourbon world to get into tequila. I found myself drinking a lot more tequila personally, kind of on the side, which was, you know, treason or blasphemy for a bourbon guy to be doing that. My wife and her friends were drinking more tequila. I became very fascinated with the space in general and really wanted to learn more about it. So after I kind of moved on from bourbon, I knew the next thing I wanted to do was in tequila. And it just so happens, as I got this is reversed, so I got to remember it's like mirrored. This is a painting of a jaguar. My uncle moved to Mexico 30 years ago to study wild jaguars. And I'd always wanted to do something to help support his cause. And then kind of during this transitional phase of my life, the light bulb went off of, well, I know how to build a spirits brand, and I want to do tequila. He's living in Mexico. What if we were able to tie the two together, and I was able to leverage my skill set and everything I've been working on for the last 6 years of building spirit brands to help raise money and awareness for this cause all around Jaguar conservation. So it sounds pretty roundabout, and it is. Never in a million years would I have predicted it. I've often thought in the last couple of months how crazy it would be if I could see myself now, just a few years ago when I was running the bourbon company. How much has changed. But it's all been for the better. It's been a lot of serendipity, a lot of luck, and quite a journey.
So with like a lot of us tequila drinkers, we don't always start out with some of the best tequilas in our experimental stage. I have
For sure.
Not so great ones. So what did you start out drinking that ended up changing your trajectory on, I'm going to get out of bourbon and go to tequila?
So we're seeing a lot of this today, a lot of bourbon drinkers getting into tequila, and it's typically on the brown spirit side, the aged expressions. And that was my journey, was trying some reposados and añejos. I had to do some reflection to think about this, but I have kind of figured out like when light bulbs started to go off. And it was at Ositos in Chicago with Mike Moreno. I was pitching him on my bourbon. We've been drinking bourbon and stuff all day. And then we had dinner and drinks at his amazing bar and restaurant there in Chicago in the little village. And then he's like, hey, how about we mix it up and start trying some tequilas? And we were all kind of like, yeah, that's great. And so he started bringing out various barrel-aged expressions, knowing that was going to become the most similar to what we'd been drinking and probably be something we'd liked. They had some single barrel picks that really blew my mind. I remember distinctly there was a really old like extra añejo finished in sherry cask done by Grand Mayan that he had there at the store. And that's sort of when some epiphanies started to go off. I thought, wow, this is incredible. I had no idea these flavors could come from tequila. Here's a guy that knows his bourbon, obviously the family lineage and in the agave spirits world. Light bulbs started to go off. And I will admit, this is a total travesty too, is that I remember buying a bottle of Casamigos Añejo and thinking, wow, this is amazing. How do they get this flavor? Because like in bourbon, you can't add flavors or anything. Right. It's all about studying barrel maturation. I remember being so perplexed and confused by like, how in the hell does the barrel yield something that tastes just like vanilla? It's remarkable. And then so I bought the bottle, and as I had like the second and third drink, and I was like, man, something's going on here. This doesn't taste like vanilla. This is vanilla. Right?
Yeah. And just depending on how long ago it was, I mean, they actually did have a really good tequila, but that was some time ago. And I think I do actually have a couple of those bottles still laying around here that I don't share, but I give everybody the additive stuff.
Yeah, I found a bottle of the old school Casamigos in my in-laws liquor cabinet. And it definitely is markedly different, but
yes,
it was from the aged expressions that got me into it. And I started buying more and more of them and experimenting and just noticing the differences and started, like Casamigos experience and kind of my own hunch led to me learning about additives in the space. And then from there, so I actually kind of worked my way backwards to Blanco. And it really wasn't until my first trips to Jalisco and visiting the distilleries that I developed like a true palate and appreciation for Blanco in its kind of tequila in its pure essence.
I'm kind of the same way, but I never came from the bourbon world. One of my friends who is a bourbon drinker tried to get me into it, and I just couldn't get past all the barrel and the smoke and stuff like that. So I kind of understand, but I still did start out with the extra añejos, which I really enjoyed for a long time. And then I slowly started working my way backwards. And now I seem to hover between that Blanco Repo, just depending on the brand of what I like to play with some exceptions in there. There's some of the aged agaves that are out there, Chinaco, Herradura, some of the old stuff. I mean, it has a whole different flavor profile compared to some of the stuff that we got floating out there today.
You mean like the dusty bottles, like the old bottles?
Yes. Yeah. And they are amazing. And I truly do enjoy them. So those are about the only.
It changes in the bottle too over time. People say that that's not scientifically possible, but it certainly happens. You can see it in whiskey as well.
Yeah. So yes, I get the direction, and now he's starting to turn into more of a tequila guy, and he wants to come over and hang out and drink all my tequila with me, and so he's slowly converting over, like you've seen. That a lot of people are coming over. It's a lot more flavorful to me. I think you do taste a lot of those notes that you're seeing on Tequila Matchmaker and so forth. So it's pretty outstanding that, you can go from one Blanco to the next Blanco, and you have two flavor profiles, and yours is amazing. You have this wonderful balance of flavors, not a ton of pepper. You got all these nice crystal clear flavors that pop right off the bat, and it's just an enjoyable sipper all the way across the board.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to say, I think I had I created the brand, so I guess it feels weird to say that I was like the guy that had the vision or whatever, but I don't really like bragging. But yeah, I guess I had the vision and like the general direction I wanted to go, but the liquid's so good because of Sergio Vivanco, Sergio Cruz, and then Adam Fodor, who really helped me design the liquid and make it possible. With a vision without a team capable of executing is worthless.
Yeah.
So the kudos goes to them for sure.
So how long did you spend in Mexico when you decided that tequila was now your passion? And how did you end up at 1414?
So my timeline is fairly sped up and will seem fairly quick compared to maybe other people's journeys because I had built a successful bourbon and rye whiskey brand before. So I knew the basics of, what it takes to import, distribute a product, design a brand, trademarking. It's sort of a lot of the same spirits company generalist things. I was able to go through the process really quickly. So I was able to quickly get to just focusing on designing the liquid. So to design the flavor profile of the Blanco took about 9 months. So just kind of backing up a little bit, my departure from my company was not pleasant. I was kind of forced out of my company by my partners, and I'm still an owner of that company because no one has volunteered or offered to buy my shares. So all my money was really tied up there. So I really was broke, to be honest, and didn't know what I was going to do. Supposedly had all the stock in my company that was worth a lot, but if you can't sell it, is it really worth anything? I don't know.
Yeah.
So not knowing what I was going to do, I bought a laptop and a computer and a plane ticket to Jalisco, and I had my uncle, the Jaguar man, meet me in Jalisco, and I figured, hey, my Spanish is crude. I studied abroad in college, and I can understand a whole lot better than I can speak. Thought it'd be a great opportunity for us to reconnect, talk about this project that I'm kind of dedicating really to his life sacrifice and stuff, and then he could help translate some things that I might not understand. The first trip was 10 days, and then we went back a couple months later for another week. So in the first year, it was about 7 weeks spent actually on ground in Jalisco designing the liquid in person, and a lot of it was done remotely by sending samples back and forth. But I bought a plane ticket and rented a car in Guadalajara and went to every tequila distillery that would see me. I'd set up a bunch of meetings in advance, kind of leveraging some industry connections, friends of friends who might know somebody who has a distillery or could direct me. There, we met with some of the obvious companies that kind of cater to people that want to start a brand, like Casa Maestri. Great folks over there. We ultimately chose a different direction. I will say, every single group we met with, the people were extremely friendly. And it was, while we had our opinions about the liquid quality and the direction for our brand, all a ton of fun tours and just a great experience. and a cultural immersion. We met the Vivancos by pure happenstance. So we were at an Agave Spirits Cantina in Guadalajara called Des Istres, and it's owned by the Quazadel family. And my uncle knew a guy who said that this was a cool place to go check out authentic agave spirits. And he suggested that we go there when we were in Guadalajara in between distillery visits. And I said, fuck it. Sure. Why not? Can I cuss on here? I don't know. But anyways, sure. Why not? Let's go taste some more agave. Why not? We get there. We show them. We met Danielle and Mario, the two brothers who run the establishment. We showed them where we'd been and where we were going. And they kind of, like, okay, we've heard of most of these places. They all make decent tequila, but nobody's producing great tequila. Right. And they have a big sign in their bar for Cascoin. And I was like, well, who do you know that can make anything close to that? Because I'm trying to find really good tequila for this project. And we're coming up short. We've been on all these meetings. We've tasted some bad tequila. We've tasted some okay tequila. We've had even some good tequila, but I've not tasted anything great. And, Los Abuelos, La Alpeña, Pendia won't meet with me. Like, where else can I go? And they said, well, what about the Vivancos at 1414? And I was like, I've never heard of it. And then they said, well, have you heard of Arte Nom 1414 and Timbre Azul? I said, oh, yeah, I've heard of those brands. Those are great brands. I said, well, that's that Nom. And I said, oh, I guess somehow I've just overlooked this. I didn't know. And I was still relatively green in my tequila journey, my personal journey, if you will, at the time. And they said, well, we think we can get you a meeting out there to meet with Mr. Vivanco. I said, that'd be wonderful. We drank a bunch more tequila and some mezcal and raicilla and all kinds of agave spirits. And I left drunk and didn't think anything of it. Went back to the town of Tequila. We had a number of other meetings. And we were out and had just finished a really late dinner. And it was about midnight. And I got a text on WhatsApp from Mario. And I didn't read it. We went back to our Airbnb and we were all drinking and kind of partying. And then finally, it's like 2:45, almost 3 in the morning. And I decided I better read this message. Or I guess I just was like scrolling or something and read it. And he's like, Mr. Vivanco will meet with you at 9 a.m. at the distillery in Arandas. And I was like, oh, great. That's awesome. And then didn't think anything of it. And then a few minutes go by and I plugged it into the Google Maps to see how far it was. And it was like 5 hours away. And I was like, oh, shit. It's effectively like 3:30 in the morning now, 5 hours. That would put us there, around 8 a.m. We got to leave like right now. So I had to go chug some water, take a shower, wake my uncle up, convince him that he's got to drive because I'm way too drunk to drive. And we got on the road, drove out there, back through Guadalajara, through rush hour traffic and all. And I was like green. I was so hungover when I pulled up. You could tell that Mr. Vivanco had like no idea really why he had taken this meeting. And these two hungover random gringos have shown up at his gate. They don't really do public tours there per se. So I've heard that. His body language is not that welcoming or inviting. And he's just kind of quickly rambling through some stuff. Effectively, you could tell like he had more important things to do. Was nice, but wanted to kind of get us in and out and never to be seen again. And Rick, my uncle, and I had kind of an agreement that we were not going to tell the distilleries about like the full brand vision because we really didn't want anybody to steal or use the name Jaguar or Jaguar in a label. And then even worse, we didn't want somebody to take our concept of playing on Jaguar conservation and then not do it full justice. Right. And then at some point in this meeting, I look over at him. I'm like, hey, Rick, I think, I'm like, it's time, man. Like, I'm like nudging him. Like, we got to tell him the full spiel or we're about to get kicked out of this place. And Rick delivered this. I was like, you just tell him about what you have done with the Northern Jaguar Project and the Northern Jaguar Reserve and the genesis and the idea around this brand. And he did. Mr. Vivanco's body language changed entirely. And then proceeded to give us the best tour that by far that we ever went on. We immediately hopped in his truck and drove out to the agave fields. And I kind of say that most of the other meetings had gone something around, what production volumes they could produce, the cost that they could produce it for. And it was more like directly into the business of what, what kind of deal we could make. that was not the case at all at the Vivancos. We didn't talk about any business terms, pricing, volumes, or anything. He started talking about the land, the soil, the legacy, preserving the integrity of the agave. And then we sat there and drank tequila for about 6 hours in this sort of infamous little portico outside at El Ranchita, the distillery, for about 6 hours. And I'm drunk again at this point. But we didn't once talk about anything. We talked about the brand concept and what it could mean for conservation, but we didn't talk about pricing or whether we could even have a deal. We talked about family, what we were into, personal interests. We told stories. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, which is like the home of blues music. Turns out,
Yeah.
Mr. Vivanco is like a diehard blues fan. So we talked about blues music and barbecue and his recent trip and bike rides in Spain and family. And I just had my son like a year before this trip. So it was this magical experience. We quickly became like old friends. And at the end, I was like, look, I don't want to get into any business terms, but like, I do need to know, like, is there something here at least? Are you willing to have another meeting so we can reschedule, come back and like really get into it? And he said, absolutely. And Rick and I went to Carnitas Jaime's across the street, which is like a kind of notorious, fun lunch place, and had a big meal, and then drove back to our hotel and passed out. And we woke up the next morning, we were both just laughing because we knew he'd found the one. And there had been a lot of really funny exchanges. We'd like literally quickly become old friends in this meeting. And it was bizarre. We both kept saying how the rest of the trip, how bizarre it was, because never in our lives had we like hit it off with somebody on such a deep connected level. And I know it sounds sort of cheesy, but it was very clear that was like meant to happen. And that this was the guy that was going to help make our dream and vision a reality. And fast forward to today, he now is a good friend. And Mario and Daniel from the bar, Desistres, back in Guadalajara, now are my heads of operations in Mexico. So they
keep an eye on the production from across the street.
Yeah, so it really helps to have somebody there on the ground representing the brand because there's all kinds of crap that comes up with delays in label production, you name it. And just having somebody that can go physically inspect. And they're producing their own brand there at 1414 as well as others. And so kind of having an advocate there to help cut through stuff, because shit happens all the time. And nothing ever goes exactly according to plan. And if we were just relying on remote communication, it wouldn't work. I think my wife would have left me because I would be constantly flying back and forth. It wouldn't be possible. So big shout out to Mario and Danielle, because they're really like the unsung heroes of this story.
That's amazing. That is truly an amazing story. And to come down to this product, from basically a drunken journey across Mexico to stumble upon, one of the finest distilleries there in Mexico, and have this product that you have coming out, it is truly amazing.
It really is.
And you mentioned some of the hang-ups at the distillery of labels, bottles. Well, they have also they also have the issue of some of the machinery breaking, and the machinery is not like anything that we have here in the States. I mean, it is pretty rudimentary to speak of, and I just can imagine they have some machinist and 3 towns over that comes over and fixes it. And they're down for 3 or 4 weeks as they're waiting for production. They just don't run to O'Reilly's and pick up that spark plug that they need to get production going again.
For sure.
Everything behind. Well, the tequila that you and who did you work with on putting these two expressions together?
So really interestingly in the story is, you notice I didn't mention Sergio Cruz, because he didn't come on the scene until later, actually. We didn't meet him the first trip. It was all with Mr. Vivanco, and who was the original master distiller after his father. Just hearing his family story and their legacy, by the way, is just truly remarkable. I think I'm going to amend that statement. We met Mr. Cruz in passing, but quickly he was busy doing something. He was not an integral part of the story until our next trip. So I came back to the U.S., sobered up. We met with a bunch more distilleries after that, but we kept coming back to our experience there at Viva Mexico, NOM 1414. And you guys, like, this is the one. And I'd been taking, I just had finished the International Tequila Academy courses with Adam Fodor. And I just shot him an email and said, hey, like, I'm starting a brand, and here's, the mission behind it. And I'm sure he rolled his eyes. God, here's another gringo starting a brand that wants advice. But then I mentioned that I'd had this amazing experience with Mr. Vivanco, and I want to go with him. And then Adam kind of lit up and was like, oh my God, there's like my favorite distillery. I've actually done some work with them before. And then, I kind of got his recommendations. Then I was like, hey, is there any way, I could pay you for some consulting on the side, just to like help get me started here, since you definitely know more about this distillery, but way more about tequila than I do. And then can we kind of, a side course about maybe even more intricate details than what your typical course offers? And he's like, sure, McCauley, I'm happy just to talk with you. And then I can't remember how it evolved, but it quickly sped up to where I was like, well, I would love for you to work on this project with me. I think you could bring a ton to it, because Adam brings an outside academic and enthusiast perspective that ultimately, in the end, really helped push Sergio Cruz and the Vivancos past their comfort zone to help us create something even more special. So kind of as that was going on, Mr. Vivanco recommended that we engage Sergio Cruz on the side as a consultant to help us design our own unique liquid. So now I don't know how other brands there at 1414 are created in terms of how they arrive on their process and flavor profile. But my understanding is that a lot of them, this is not calling out anybody specifically, but a lot of the brands, you just kind of tell them kind of what you're looking for, and they say, okay, well, we'll try our best. And then you get a sample and you either approve or reject. And a lot of the brand owners and founders are not that actually involved in the design of the liquid. We were really hands-on, and a big testament to Adam was he built a process map. We call it the recipe, but the recipe is the same as all. It's just agave, water, and yeast. So it's really more of a process map and the series of steps that we take to produce our product. And Adam was integral in designing the wild yeast strain component of our tequila, and designed the entire process with Sergio Cruz. Adam designed the theory behind it, which involves our cooking time, removing the cogollo, our cooking time, the milling speed, wild fermentation, and the exact cuts that we use on the still. And that's really important. And normally I don't even get into that, because most people in a liquor store bar we don't make it to that part of the conversation of talking about exactly how all of the heads are left in, and we cut out the tails and the reason for that, etc. But Adam had this theory, which was, I said I really wanted to try to incorporate more citrus and floral notes to try to brighten up the spirit, because we tasted through a lot of the house recipes. It's very sweet. Right. I liked it. And I was like, I want to add more citrus and floral notes. One, because I think that would differentiate it from the other products coming out. And then two, I think that will help its mixability into cocktails for more novice drinkers, because from the outset, I was pretty adamant that I wanted the product to appeal to both enthusiasts and novice tequila drinkers alike. And as much as like I want to get in and nerd out with craft spirit enthusiasts, there's 10 or 20 just ordinary consumers out there that we have to appeal to if we're going to be a business for every one of the enthusiasts, right? And so I figured if we could have more citrus floral notes, it would go better in traditional tequila cocktails and just be a natural flavor profile for the novice drinker to latch onto. So with that backdrop of knowing what we're trying to thread, Adam developed the theory around using wild yeast and then distilling our product to a higher ABV and using special proprietary cuts where we leave in all of the heads, remove all the tails, and everything, designed to take the bolder, more earthen tones and terroir-driven flavors that come from wild yeast and convert them over into the citrus and floral flavors. In other words, the act of distilling it to a higher ABV and where we chose to make our cuts actually changes through a natural, non-additive process the flavor that's in there to be in line with the flavor profiles we were looking for. And there were several iterations of that process that were developed. We went through a number of rounds of sampling, which is always fun. And then about 5 months in, they were like, look, we think we have it. You need to come back, like actually come on site and let's go through this because this is starting to show really nicely. And I got a sample in the mail and agreed. It's like, wow, it's time to dial this in. We're really getting close to where we're trying to go. And we found, so we're going to be releasing that just wild yeast strain tequila as our high proof Nocturna edition. So that's coming out, spoiler alert, this winter, spring. We're going to do a high proof, and it'll be 100% wild yeast. But our signature Blanco with the blue label is a blend of two different tequilas, one with wild yeast and one with champagne yeast. We found when we diluted our wild yeast strain tequila from high proof, 50 and above. It's really nice at 48 too. But we found we diluted it down to 40%, which is what it needed to be commercially to be kind of our mainstay Blanco. It lost a little bit of its oomph, and it had an amazing mid palate and finish. But upon dilution, it really lost its fore palate at the beginning. And then the House Reserve at Viva Mexico is sort of this whole exploration in champagne yeast. And we found that product, in my opinion, had an amazing beginning and then starts to trail off in the mid palate and has almost no finish at all. We started to think, man, what if we could combine in some component of the champagne yeast to create balance in our 40% Blanco? So then we embarked upon, now we had designed one tequila, now we had to design a second tequila, and admittedly we were able to piggyback off a lot of the research that they'd done there at the distillery and their champagne yeast. And our champagne yeast strain is very similar to the House Reserve Viva Mexico Blanco. But we blend in 20% of the champagne yeast formulation to create a sweeter kind of initial hook that gets you drawn in. And then you go on the full roller coaster ride of the wild yeast through the mid palate and finish. That blending was my idea. I will take credit for that. The ratio 80-20 was Sergio Cruz's. So I just kind of was like, what if we blend this? And then I did it 50-50, just kind of sitting there at the table, kind of napkin math, directionally correct blending type thing, just to see, is it working or not? I knew it wasn't going to be the exact ratio. We could tell it was working. It added back in that sweetness, that hook, that beginning, that initial taste that really gets you in. And then Sergio Cruz then quickly, almost instantly, went to 80-20, passed it back around, and we were all like, oh, fuck, that's it. It's amazing. It created back, again, the balance. But I think once y'all taste the wild yeast strain tequila 100% on its own, you're going to be blown away. Our regular Blanco is incredible.
Yes.
It's much more subtle. But this one's going to be like a tequila drinker's tequila, and it's a ton of flavor. It's remarkable how much flavor's in it, honestly.
I am looking forward to trying it. I can't wait until it comes to Kansas City area, of course. I mean, we got you here, so it is amazing. And I do love your Blanco. Your Blanco is just fabulous. So,
and it was a fun process because Adam came up with the initial theory, which is effectively just an idea written down on paper, and it was really interesting to see where Sergio Cruz, with all his years of real world experience distilling and knowing the limitations of his equipment, would say, well, we can't do it exactly like that, but we could try. This is the closest we could get to, or what about this? And so he had a ton of input, but I definitely credit Adam for giving that really big push into a new direction and a new concept. And that's where some people have said, well, with such a legend as Sergio Cruz, why would you ever need someone else? And it's like, well, he's a total maestro and knows his stuff, but having an outside academic experience influence that helps push can help get somebody to do something even greater.
Yeah, no, I total hit run, home run. I mean, I saw the post today, and I actually reposted it to the group a couple times. That
Thank you.
voted number one for Esquire. I mean, it seems like your brand compared to a lot of other brands. I mean, it was almost talked about before it even came out. And then once it got out and it hit the Kansas City area, and I talked to a lot of the liquor stores around here, they were already talking it up quite a bit. I don't know if you were paying them.
You're making me blush. I'm going to have to pour some more.
It almost, I mean, I was waiting for the day that it land on the shelf for me to go up and grab a couple of bottles of each. But it didn't land in Kansas City so fast. So we had to order it online. I actually got it as a Father's Day gift, and I'm still enjoying it. So now we're going to have to start supporting some of the liquor stores around here that actually do support it, and restocking my pile up here at the house. So you mentioned the high proof, and high proof in the tequila world right now is really, really hot. And I'm looking forward to it. And can you give us any notes on what we should expect coming from, and from what it sounded like you were doing a single strand of wild yeast, not
That's right.
Adding the champagne.
That's right. I would say so wild yeast in a Blanco tequila, of all, yeast in any spirit or wine is going to influence the end taste dramatically. Mm-hmm. In tequila, when you don't have a whole lot to hide behind if you're not using additives, with just agave and water being the other ones, and then maybe some interesting ways to process it. So the yeast strain is pivotal, is like music, but the yeast strain is pivotal in the flavor. And wild yeast, is just naturally occurring in the air and is going to be highly impacted by the season, which is going to be impacted by the climate, the amount of pollen or lack thereof in the air at the time. And so the time of year will impact it dramatically. And so I have only tasted our wild yeast strain tequila. We're going to go into a production run this winter, which will be a season that we have never actually done it in before. We've tasted it in the spring, summer, and fall, but I've never tasted this tequila in the winter. And this will be from a different field because we've tasted it on previous test batches of agave harvested from one field. We'll have to harvest a new field for this expression. So we don't yet know exactly what it's going to taste like. But having tasted it in a few seasons, it's dialed up.
So is it kind of a single estate?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Yes. So the cool thing about it, and I didn't even really appreciate or know this at the beginning when we first got into this, but in speaking more with Mr. Vivanco, we're all the agave that's going into this so far has been single estate agave from fields from the Vivanco family ranch.
Awesome.
And so that's something that the label doesn't say that because initially we didn't know that was necessarily going to be the case.
Right.
And so now that we realize that that's an actual option for us to not just do that once, but stick with that, we're going to start adding a few more notes on our label. So I'm going to look for some updates in just this section here on the process notes where we do want to add in some key call outs like single estate and look to actually identify the field, either by name or geographical coordinates. We're still debating exactly how we're going to identify the field.
Which
so
the CRT is very big on. I've taken the tests and geographical pole like a survey guy on the side of the road, and here they are, and they're marking the field so they know exactly where every piece of agave came from.
Which is cool that's even just like a part of the natural supply chain of agave and tequila. In other categories like bourbon, that would be a real challenge because most people are just buying bulk corn, but there's no that would be up to the distillery or brand owner to create kind of their own tracking system for that, which would be its own whole conundrum. So the fact that the system's set up to kind of naturally allow for that's really cool. But you asked about flavor profiles. I would just say everything's going to be dialed up. It's going to be bolder. I mean, every batch that we've had of it is just bolder, more flavor. If you really like tequila and agave flavor, you're going to love it. I did feel for our mainstay tequila, the flavor was a little too bold, and the proof points were a little too high to keep that bold flavor to be our just kind of everyday Blanco. That's why we created the blend to create balance to get down to 40%. But this is a tequila drinker's tequila.
So sure. Can you say how high on the proof, or is that yet to be determined?
Yeah. So one lesson that I've learned coming into tequila from bourbon. So just a quick aside is in bourbon right now, the trend is all high proof as well. And we sold a ton of single barrels at the highest possible proof we could, barrel strength. A lot of our barrels at Blue Note would be north of 125 proof, some even over 130 proof. That's amazing in bourbon. But those are not actually the best bourbons, just like they are not the best tequilas. Like you want balance in flavor. And so obviously 55% is the highest we could release it. I think the product shows in all of our test batches a lot better in that 100, 101. And I'm leaning towards like 101 proof of where I also just think 101 sounds cooler than 100. It sounds a little edgier, but it shows really nicely there. And does have some balance that is not just like some dick measuring contest, like so many of these other high proof things that become, how spicy do you want it? Oh, I want it as spicy as possible. How much alcohol? All the way. I want the product to actually be good and let the liquid itself determine that. And it's showing much nicer when we add just a little bit of that well water that comes from the Vivanco estate to it. It opens it up.
And that adds some credibility to some of the newest releases that have just been put out. And one is at 106 and one is at 101. And personally, my favorite is the 101. So we'll get to experience that with your expression as well. I really hope to have that land here very soon and make its way through our market, because there is a lot of people seem to be enjoying your tequila with all the posts that I've done, and trying to let people know about this online event. Everybody seems to be just so excited to actually meet the creator and the person behind the brand.
Thank you. Well, first off, we got to jump in and say we have a great distribution partner there in the Kansas and Missouri area. Great shout out to Vintegrity. Look for more product hopefully available in 2024 as our brand builds. I mean, it's just this is how a brand is built. It's one taste, one expression, organically at a time, just like this. And so, just getting the opportunity to come on here and talk about our brand. I mean, I can go into as much detail and go as long as you want. So feel free to ask anything else, and I can just start drinking and rambling too if you want me to.
Well, I'm with you on that one. So the biggest question for you, and it's been asked and hinted for the last, I'm going to say 3 months, that there's an añejo coming out right quick. But then it seems to fade away and then come back. And up until a recent conversation, we're still a little bit of ways.
Yep. Our añejo will not be ready until the end of the summer of 2024. Those are when the barrels we laid down turn 1.
Okay.
So this year in 2024, we're going to release our high proof Blanco. We're going to play around with some limited single barrel releases of our Reposado, maybe a club pick, perhaps. And then we'll be launching our añejo at the end of the summer, kind of going into fall, which kind of should work well for añejo season, if you will. If añejo is the closest representative to tequila, I mean, in the tequila world to whiskey sales pick up in the fall with the colder weather. So that's just a coincidence. We just were delayed and laying down stock, so it's timing out well.
Yeah.
and then we plan on doing single barrels from that. Right now, I'm in a big inventory acquisition and laydown phase of where I'm putting more and more liquid into barrels to build up our aged stocks. It takes time to do it right. I'm building up what I call my cooperage bank, which would be the repository of barrels, the wooden barrels themselves I have in my inventory. So in the bourbon world, you can only use the barrels once, right? But in tequila, we can reuse them over and over again. And so it's a different,
a little bit of a different beast. Yeah.
It's a different beast and a different puzzle to solve for about, tracking the useful life on them. I don't share, and this is not like, I come from the whiskey world. And so in whiskey, we study cooperage pretty intensely, and it's all about the impact of oak onto the spirit. And so I don't anticipate ever using any of our barrels more than 4 times. That would be the absolute limit in my mind. But, you hear so many greats like Carlos Camarena talking about how they'll reuse them, 15 times and stuff for Ocho. I'm trying to come from a different, perspective. He's obviously knows way more about tequila than I do, but I think there's opportunities to get really nuanced with the impact of oak and playing around with it. And realistically, a barrel does not have any wood tannin left to give after the 4th use. So for our aged expressions, I want them to be aged. I want them to be noticeably different than our Blanco. And I view it as a step up in oak influence. Blanco, no oak influence at all. Reposado, oak influence. Ours is fairly heavily oaked compared to other Reposados. And then look for significant oak impact on our Añejo. Of course, you'll still be able to taste the Agave. We're never going to get away from that. But we're building up our barrel bank and getting into different wood species. So our Reposado, just like in our Blanco, we blend 2 yeast strains together. We take that Blanco, we age it to become our Reposado, and we use both American and French oak in our Reposado. It goes through a double barreling process. I don't know of anybody else doing that right now. And again, trying to create the balance in oak. So American oak, the number one thing you get is vanillin or vanilla flavor. Secondary flavors of butterscotch, caramel, etc. And in French oak, you get much more baking spice, earthy tones, and kind of chalkier notes that all come from the climate and soil in France. And it's a different species of oak as well. And so I think they both have really good things that can be used together in a blend where they can really complement each other and harmonize. So our American oak barrels are ex-bourbon barrels like most, and our French oak barrels are toasted French oak Chardonnay barrels that I've acquired out of a winery in Santa Barbara, California. And I'm building up that barrel repository. I've just brought in some port barrels from Portugal that are French oak based. We're starting to experiment with Hungarian oak. Thanks, Adam, as our resident Hungarian. Hungarian oak's great because it's sort of an in-between of American and French. And then we just filled the really most exciting thing we have going is the 20 barrels of Mizunara oak that I just filled. And I think we'll be the first ever group to do an Añejo aged exclusively in virgin Mizunara from Japan.
Wow. Okay, we're starting to get a few questions that I think that we should ask.
Come on.
Plans for a high proof repo?
Yeah, I think we would do that in single barrel form.
Okay.
Or like a limited batch release. I think that could be really fun.
Oh, I absolutely think and it does seem like there's a few starting to pop up, not a lot, but with the high proof really it seems like taking off, that could be a home run.
And to that point, we're experimenting with different barrel entry proofs. So the proof in which you put the liquid into the barrel is going to totally impact the chemical reaction of how that distillate extracts oak flavor, which is a big thing in the whiskey world, just like it is in tequila. And we were playing around different barrel entry proofs. So we put our first batches of our repo have gone in at an extraordinarily low, 41 to 42% ABV, so just over bottling proof because it's only a 4-month maturation cycle, and we ran some tests and felt like we'd still be able to pull it out right at 40. Because our products are entirely unfiltered too, which is important to mention. G4 is the only tequila I know of that can claim and it actually is unfiltered. I'm sure y'all know of others, and there probably are. I haven't researched to see who else is or isn't doing that, but I do believe we're the only one coming out of 1414 that's entirely unfiltered, because we got into a pretty heated discussion / debate with the production and bottling manager there, that it could be done and it wouldn't jeopardize the integrity of the family's reputation or anything. They were afraid that it could become cloudy, which is a risk, but we were able to prove that it wouldn't happen. So, yep, we can do it at a higher proof, but it might not be all the way at 55.
Okay. And a couple of the questions also, is Adam still involved? And will he be involved in the high proof?
Is this Adam over here trying to vie for his job? What's he posting on here?
No, yes, I actually know this guy.
I'm teasing.
Joshua, me and him have had a few conversations. So he's not paying me to make sure that he
I'm just teasing.
Retains his job.
I'm just thinking, the new year starting, Adam's trying to make sure that there's a group out there. No, of course, Adam's still involved, and so he was very involved in the initial iteration of everything, and then now we launched. And there's kind of a lull where we weren't doing a whole lot of new products. We got to get these to market, but now we're getting back into product innovation. That's where Adam really shines. Yes, Adam's involved. The high proof, the wild East strain tequila really and truly is Adam's. He designed it. And so he's definitely going to be integral in improving the batch. We're also just started with Adam to do a course on Alma del Jaguar, similar to his recently announced course for G4. And then we're also playing around with Hungarian oak and adding a third oak into our Reposado and Añejo. Again, I don't know, a whole lot of people are doing 3 different oaks in their everyday expression. And Adam was instrumental on the Hungarian oak. He claims it's because he's not biased being from Hungary or anything, that it's just because Hungarian oak is so great in and of its own accord. And I actually agree with him. Hungarian oak is unique, and it's actually a little bit cheaper than French oak, so it allows us to experiment with it a little more freely, but offers a totally new flavor profile.
Okay, Joshua's on a roll.
Keep going.
I'm not going to. Here we go. What about
Amarana?
Yes.
So that's getting into non-oak species, and that actually came up the other day. So there's a gentleman named Rob Crandall, who is one of the leading barrel brokers in the world, who specializes in the trade of used cooperage, used barrels and wine casks, etc. And he actually is making a pitch to me on the Amarana. That's a very intense wood. That tequila, first off, is a much more delicate distillate than grain distillates like whiskey. Mm-hmm. So it's impacted much easier than a grain distillate with oak. So with bourbon, I like to say we effectively just want a 2x4 of oak, and we just want to smash it down and just beat as much oak flavor into it as possible to get a bourbon. With tequila, it's much more nuanced. And Amburana is a species of tree that grows in mostly Brazil, and it is extremely potent in flavor. So it would have to just be very lightly arrested in there. But we had played around with the concept of Amburana. Amburana's number one flavor note is cinnamon and allspice, and how that could really be interesting with the natural spice and peppery notes, and sometimes even cinnamony notes coming out of tequila. I like to say Agave's number one tasting note to me is pumpkin pie, sweet potato. Why am I drawing a blank? Butternut squash in that flavor profile, which all of those go really well with cinnamon, just in terms of food. And so we had talked about that, and then we're even throwing around crazy ideas about bringing in some Calvados barrels from France and doing like an apple pie kind of deal, where you introduce Calvados, which is an apple or pear distillate, with that cinnamon. It could be totally wild. So we're going to start doing some pretty crazy stuff once it comes to finishes.
And It looks like he has another question here.
Keep them coming.
I was asking another distiller today about
Mizunara, the Japanese oak.
Okay, I'll go with
that. Happy to share that secret with anybody that we have them, because if you're a competing brand owner, I challenge you to go find them. They're damn hard to find. Been on a waiting list for like 6 years for these things.
Wow.
And they are 25 times more expensive than my French oak, which is already 3 times more expensive than the American oak. They're expensive, rare, hard to get, a logistical nightmare to import into Mexico. That's why nobody's really done it.
Okay. Let's see if there's any other really good questions in here. Probably involved with the profiles. You kind of already asked that one. Well, that looks like it's about the balance of the watchers' questions. So you've kind of created an umbrella, and Jaguar is a brand inside of the umbrella. Do you foresee other tequila companies coming down the pike? Are you going to stay in this segment, or are you going to branch out and possibly do something else?
So the title I give myself is Spirits Entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've somehow found my home. And I guess my mom could have predicted this when she caught me drinking beer at 14, that I would end up somehow in the alcohol world, hopefully for the positive. But I call myself a spirits entrepreneur, and I just love craft beverage and craft spirits. It's really fun to bring a brand to market and to life, because it's a creation that ultimately takes a life of its own, bigger than me or our company, and resonates with the consumer and becomes this whole thing. So we actually are launching a gin brand in January, and I have been exploring other agave spirits. I've been to Oaxaca on several occasions, scouting mezcal, which is an entirely different beast when it comes, especially to like the business. I mean, we all know here probably the differences in production and stuff, but once it comes to the business and logistics side, a whole other host of issues come up to do it right. Fairly easy to do a commercial mezcal, an entirely different thing to do an ancestral or artisanal mezcal and do it right with all the logistics and components to it. I'll show you my gin really quickly, just for fun. It's going to be launching in January. It's called Waymar Gin. It'll be hitting the market across the country, and hopefully is successful. Within tequila, I have done, and would be very curious in full candor to know the audience's thoughts on this, and we'd be happy to even send out samples. So I have, as a different experiment, laid down a lot of liquid with another distillery in the valley. I'm really transparent, as you'll find. I did this as an investment. We were investing in aging stocks of tequila. So I partnered with La Cofradia on a larger investment, laying down additive-free Blanco that's exclusively aged and toasted French oak. It will become añejo in March. And the original thought was to sell that product back into the market to other brands as an additive-free bulk option. And the idea was to use the profits that we could generate from that to invest back into Alma del Jaguar, which will remain exclusively with the Vivancos. And that's something I'd done in bourbon, using these kind of larger distilleries as ways to invest in the inventory. We're already in this space, et cetera. But the liquid's showing really, really nicely. And I got a lot of barrels of it. And so there could be some really interesting single barrel opportunities out of that. I do not think at this time we're going to bottle it under the Alma del Jaguar trademark, but we are exploring other opportunities there as kind of like a limited single barrel valley kind of flavor profile.
Okay. We got another question coming in. Well, I've seen it a couple of times now. So, as far as distribution for 2024.
Yep.
due to you're not, pumping out hundreds of gallons of millions of gallons of your tequila because, we know the reputation of 1414 and it's ready when it's ready. And it seems like you're sticking with those same rules. Do you see distribution growing for 2024? And what areas are you focusing on, if you can say?
So, I mean, I might be shooting myself in the foot with this statement, but I'm just transparent. I'm an entrepreneur. And that my entrepreneurial spirit's not about like greed or making money. It's just about, it's fun to build business and going on the journey of it. I want Alma Jaguar to be an international brand one day and hopefully can compete with some bigger brands and get people to, into our world of additive-free artisanal tequilas. And so that's like I close my eyes, the dream is that we'd be distributed in all states. And we're obviously never going to be like a 1 million case brand or something, but we'd love to be a national brand with some clout. That's how we can change the way people see tequila, and that's how I can raise the most money. So I donate 10% of my profits from this to supporting Jaguar conservation. More sales, more impact of protecting wild jaguars through my uncle's initiative. So right now we're in 10 states. We're actually going to open up another 8 states in the first 4 months of 2024. The biggest kind of two areas of the country that we're not servicing right now are the West Coast and the Northeast, and we're going to change that. We recognize California is the largest tequila market in the world. And we need to be in there. It's just extremely competitive. And so we opted not to go into that market initially due to our lack of familiarity with the market. And then just the competitive nature, decided let's come back to that in year 2. And the same kind of goes for the Northeast, not quite as big of a tequila market, but massive population base with a ton of tequila drinkers and its own complexities for distribution. So right now we're in Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, and Connecticut. And we have started to slowly trickle into California. We'll be activating California in full this winter and spring, as well as Nevada, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. And that was just kind of moving west to east. There's all different timelines. We have all of those launches like slated on the calendar. Most of those will happen in the first 4 months of the year.
Awesome. That is, I mean, for us to beat Kansas to the lots is amazing. So I can say I'm spectacularly happy about it. And Bill, he said you just made his evening.
Yeah, I mean, so our big thing's the Jaguar conservation, but as I've gotten more into it, I'm now equally as excited about educating people on additive-free tequila and what I call real tequila is.
Yes.
And that has now become like our left and right hand punches of what excites our team, why we get out of bed every morning. And it's just fun to convert people. Because what I found is, so the new market leader in our space is Casamigos, with Don Julio trailing it. And I think Casamigos did a really good job at one thing, which was bringing more people into the tequila category. So as much as we want to shit on and talk trash about them, which I share a lot of those same opinions, there was at least some good that came of it, which was more people interested in learning about tequila. And I found that consumer that buys Casamigos specifically on a regular basis to not be that brand loyal. And so what I found in our kind of anecdotal and actual research is that a lot of those people are drinking it because they actually just don't know any better. They actually believe it's a good product. They kind of fell for it, if you will. Like in the whiskey space, there's the Jack Daniels drinker who's just not going to drink anything other than Jack Daniels, no matter how much money you try to spend on marketing to convince them otherwise. But in this Casamigo drinker, they're actually not that brand loyal, and they're willing to switch. And so when I love to convert people from the Don Julios, from the Casamigos over into our additive-free world, and it's extremely rewarding when they do, because you see the light bulb go off in their eyes, just like it went off in your eyes, however it did when you tried something real and authentic for the first time. And it's so fun converting those kind of general tequila mass market audience drinkers into this space and getting them educated on it, because it is such a bizarre category, tequila, that is in the US, because it's now the #1 spirit category in the US, surpassing vodka for the first time since 1968 this year. Yet our consumer on average knows so little about the product. I bet each one of y'all can say that this happens to you all the time. How many times does somebody say, oh yeah, tequila is made from a guava, or they make up some, I was like, what, how many different species did you just combine? No, it's an agave, or I heard it's made from a cactus. It's made from that cactus thing. You're like, yeah, well, it's an agave. It's not technically a cactus. It's sort of cactus-like, but it's actually a succulent. You go into all that, and it's fun to educate people. But it's bizarre of how many people are drinking this product on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and just don't know anything about it. And they're actually receptive to learn. And that's where we all, as kind of a group or alliance, come in is to educate.
So I was listening to a different podcast. If you got a few more minutes.
I'm drinking now, man, so I'm all yours.
Hey, so I'm joining you. So I listened on to a different podcast, and I found it a bit interesting. One, I guess I didn't totally think about it as a process, but a lot of new tequila companies, you know, when they come out, you know, of course, it's easy to come out with the Blanco. And then it's really easy to come out with a Repo because, I mean, you're only at 3 months, right?
Sure.
And then they come out with a Añejo almost immediately. But you, in some of your comments, you made the innuendo of a lot of people will go to something like you were mentioning earlier that I meant to ask, that they will go to somebody else and buy their casks and make it their own or label it of their own. You have no plans of doing that with the Jaguar brand.
Correct. All of our distillate, we want to age ourselves. And
with the Vivanco family.
Yeah, for the ADJ right now, we're thinking just the Vivanco family. There may be some limited expressions. You know, originally we were tossing my investment with the Code for Dia liquid. I don't want to confuse anybody. That was literally like a bulk investment. As we're tasting the liquid, we have tossed around and marketing ideas. What if we did a limited edition under the ADJ trademark? I think we're now moving away from that concept and just creating its own label. If we even release any of it on its own. I think it could be fun to do some work with some other distillers in the future and show different varietals and expressions. But we've hitched our wagon to the Vivanco family and have negotiated a long-term arrangement with them for this brand. And that's where we want to be. And we filled our own barrels for the Añejo, and we want that to come online and to be its own distinctly Alma del Jaguar expression.
And of course,
but you can. Sorry.
It seems like
you can buy bulk whiskey. I mean, bulk tequila on the market and blend it. Like that's the thing. So the NOM does not tell you who distilled the product. The NOM tells you who bottled it, and a lot of people get confused by that.
Absolutely, and a lot of people do forget about that, and that may account for some of the questionable bottles that are coming out of some of these prestige companies that we put on a pedestal, 1414, 1123 being a couple of them. And then you get one that doesn't seem like it fits within their range. So that answers a lot of questions for a lot of people.
For what it's worth, Mr. Vivanco said he himself told me they don't, nor will they, bottle outside distillates. I mean, I asked him that point blank just to try to know what all was the possibility, because I do think it would be really interesting. Like, what if you took Pandillo or Buelos or Cascoin liquid and started blending Highland and Lowland distillates together in a non-shady, fully transparent way? You could get some crazy flavor profiles from that. I like blending, right?
Yes.
Cooking is a combination of various spices, flavors, and techniques. Coming from whiskey, where the real art of a good whiskey is about the blend. I like blending. There's amazing layers and complexities you can introduce through the art of the blend. I don't think anybody's ever done that, and I don't. That's not necessarily in our future, but I just think as like a side note, that would be totally wild and cool if done right and not done to cover up something.
Yes, I would agree.
Yep.
I think that would be a very interesting concept. Maybe on a small batch at first, but yeah, I mean, I do love the Cascaween notes that come out of there. For 1123, not to point out anybody and
sure, sorry,
but yes, and then 1414. I mean, everything's phenomenal coming out of there as well. So,
you want to hear some cool things about 1414? So,
absolutely,
because well, they've really grown. You've seen them produce a lot more brands recently. I think they're done taking on new brands for a while. At least that's what I've been told. And they're expanding, and there's some exciting expansions that are happening, like the installation of the Tahona.
We've saw some of those photos. I didn't know if everybody was aware, but we'll make sure.
Which could, well, I'll let them kind of make a bigger public announcement, but enough photos have circulated that the cat's out of the bag there.
Yes,
the cat's out of the bag, Jaguar. But yeah, we want to explore with that, and then there's some rumors about maybe a wooden still that could be installed as a kind of experimental small batch still. That could be totally wild. And then one thing that I do want to do is, as we're exploring more and more into the oak influence on our aged expressions, is looking at doing wooden fermentation as well. Sorry, it's reverse. I keep using the wrong hand. The stuff coming out of G4 with fermented in wood is incredible, and totally opened my mind, my palate to that. And now I am so curious about what that could be like. And then the Codigo expression aged in some of their old barrels, I thought was really, really interesting as well. And it just opens up a whole new frontier. I like to innovate and create and experiment. So that's what excites me.
It's like cooking. I mean, I'm from an Italian heritage, and my great grandmother's spaghetti recipe and how it's evolved through the chains of, down to my mother,
Sure.
Yes, I get it. And it's pretty much the same thing. And, I would say, Sergio Cruz and his family, the Vivanco family, they have done an astounding job of, creating your recipe with you and Adam at the helm. Love everything about it.
Awesome. Can I say a couple of things that make our brand different from like a brand perspective?
Sure.
And so the most marked difference is our environmental conservation, which is all around wild Jaguar conservation. If you haven't been to it, check out our website, and then check out the northernjaguarproject.org. That's my uncle and his team's organization. They manage the largest privately managed wildlife refuge in Mexico. So we're really the only tequila brand that was formed with the specific environmental purpose and cause. And that's what made the Vivanco such a great partner, is their own sustainable practices. No chemicals used from field to bottle, and already practicing so many sustainable things just because that was their family's tradition and legacy, not because it's cool or 2023 or any sort of political reason. And then the lifestyle that we're trying to promote, you will see in all of our social media posts, in any way that we bring our brand to life through any sort of like photographic or video representation, is going to look a lot different than other brands. We're always going to show our brand outside. That's like one of our key ethos, and our new branding campaign is called Wildly Free, which plays into our wild yeast and additive free nature, but also because we want to keep these guys wild and free as well. And then we think the people that are going to respond to that message and really care about true flavor coming from the earth, which is a Vivanco family saying, and care about protecting the cats and nature, people that actually get outside and explore nature. And so that can be hiking, camping, fly fishing, skiing, or if you're in a more urban environment, just getting outside on a patio deck or park, where fire pits, with friends. You're always going to see our brand outside. And I think that's a big difference. I mean, obviously the big brands are all showing, nightclubs, celebrities, red carpets, all that stuff. But we want to show our lifestyle, which is what we actually do, which is we like to get outside. We like to go hiking, climbing, camping, etc. And so you will see that over and over in our marketing thing because that's who we are, and we think that's critical to our brand ethos. And we've been lucky enough to make some strategic alignments with groups like Patagonia, and Yeti coolers, and brands that also embody our kind of outdoor lifestyle ethos.
One other thing that you didn't mention that I picked up on a, I don't know if I was reading it or picked it up in another interview that you did, is everything's 100% recycled.
That's right. Yeah. So this awesome package is made from 100% recycled materials. I don't know if anybody's done that one yet. So I never claimed to be the only one. Surely somebody else has attempted it, but we felt that it was critical that our product be produced as sustainably as possible. We can't rob Peter to pay Paul. I mean, we can't go sell a bunch of tequila, help save some Jaguars, but then harm the environment back in Jalisco. And so we really went the extra mile and have 100% recycled Mexican glass, agave fiber labels, repurposed cork stoppers, biodegradable seals, and then it ships in a 100% recycled cardboard shipper box. And all of those materials are sourced from suppliers within an 80-mile radius of the distillery. So it's all locally manufactured as well, which is really cool. And I'm actually close friends. This is crazy because in the bourbon world, we bought most of our glass out of India and China and wherever the hell we could get it. With this, I've actually become really good friends with the glass factory owner and the label factory owner. And so every time when I go to Guadalajara, before I head out to Arandas, we always go out for a big night on the town, and it's pretty cool. And like, it's this amazing series of people along the way that have had big and small influences to make this possible. And I made this map kind of flow chart of it, and there's it takes something like 75 different people behind the scenes to bring this product to life, whether it be the glass manufacturers, the label manufacturers, our operations team, marketing team, insurance, and everybody overlooks some of the more mundane things that make it possible, the attorneys, the accountants, et cetera. And it's just incredible how it's all come together. And you said it has happened really fast. And honestly, that's a product of our hard work, but a lot of luck. I mean, it's crazy the amount of coincidence, or at least perceived coincidence, and kind of what I call serendipity that allows this to happen. And we're so fortunate for it.
Yes, and I would totally agree. Like I was mentioning earlier, it seemed like people were talking about your brand before it even made it to the Midwest here in Kansas and Missouri, and it was almost, it was crazy how once I ended up getting my hands on it and I started cracking open the bottles with some friends, that, I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, this is truly amazing. It is one that I'll always keep on my shelves, and my friends always want to, crack them open and drink them with me and stuff like that. So it is truly a lovely tequila, and it's got an amazing story behind it. And with everything that you've taught us tonight, and hopefully with stuff that's coming down the pike, this journey will continue to grow with you and into hopefully more regions compared to what everybody's been telling us about.
Oh, and we're going to start selling it in Mexico too. So we're in negotiations for Mexican distribution, which is a whole other complexity as I'm finding the way that works. So we have to set up a Mexican entity, like a company, formed under the laws of Mexico that then bring in all kinds of tax complexities. My accountants are going to kill me. But I feel like it's like so important because we try to be as authentic as possible. And we are starting to build, a fan base, and we have team members that live there that would love to be able to, recommend the product to their friends and family. So we really want to do that. And, I really hope that it's a successful, economic venture. But the motivation for me there is really like it's weird to me that like so much of our team is based in Mexico and can't buy our product. And so we want to make it available for those team members to share, just like we get that opportunity.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. Seems like a lot of people enjoyed your time as well. If there's anything else last minute that you want to throw in there.
Well, yeah, thanks so much for your support. I mean, I keep emphasizing that I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a humble entrepreneur. I mean, I'll give you now that I've had a few drinks, I'll show you. My office is nothing fancy. It's just boxes and shit piled everywhere. I buy my cars used. My house is pretty small. I'm pretty broke right now. So every bottle, every recommendation makes a pretty big difference in us. And if you want to learn more, please follow us at Alma del Jaguar on Instagram, Facebook. Check out our website, and if you can, please go to northernjaguarproject.org and learn really more about the inspiration and passion behind why we created it and the why reason for why we exist. And make a donation if that's at all possible in your budget.
Awesome. I appreciate your time. If you give me 2 seconds, I'll end this. And yeah, doesn't look like anybody else has got any conversation. So thank you again. I appreciate it. Salute.
DJ, it's been a lot of fun to get to meet you, and seriously would love to figure out some ways to do some cool events in the KCMO area.
Absolutely. Thank you. And
or
it looks like we have a lot of thank yous here. So.
Hell yeah.